Now we're moving on to finding SOH CAH TOA. SOH CAH TOA stands for, it's a handy way to remember all of the trig ratios. We've already done tangent. So tangent is opposite over adjacent, but SOH CAH TOA stands for the other two ways we could set up ratios. So we're going to have, for example, theta in the corner, 12 here, 5 here, and 13 there. We already know tangent, but let's start with the first one. We normally start with sine. Then there's a new one also called cosine, and then the regular tangent. Now we already learned that tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. And then we learned that this right here would be the opposite because it's opposite of the angle, and this guy here is the adjacent. Now the hypotenuse is just always the hypotenuse. It's the one across from the right angle. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And we just have to memorize this. So some people have come up with the acronym. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. So some people also write it, sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. So that's how you set them up. You're going to set them up exactly the way you do with tangent, but there's more options here. So, example 1. Let's say that we wanted to find a side. We know that this right here is 31 degrees, and we have 20 here and the x right there. Okay, now standing in this corner, we have to think about what sides do we have. We have an opposite, we have a hypotenuse, we don't have the adjacent right here. And since it's opposite and hypotenuse, we're going to go with sine, opposite and hypotenuse. So we're going to write sine of the angle. You always put the angle in the trig function, and you set it equal to the ratio, opposite over hypotenuse. This will be 20 over x. Okay? And if you were paying attention in the last video, you can do the switcheroo here, make your life easier. So if you keep 20 on top of the fraction, you can actually do 20 over the sine of 31 degrees. Now it's time to go to our calculator. You do 20 divided by sine of 31, and I'm getting an answer of 38.8 as my length. This represents the hypotenuse on this side. So a follow-up question a teacher might ask is, what are all the sides of the triangle? So just remember, if you have 20 here, and you have a side now, the hypotenuse, you can actually use Pythagorean to figure this out. You would do 20 squared plus 38.8 squared equals, oh, sorry, setting up the Pythagorean wrong here. 20 squared plus b squared, because that's the leg, equals 38.8 squared. So I could work it out and find the other leg. Just don't do what I did originally. Make sure that the hypotenuse is c. Okay. Here's another example. Example 2. Let's say you have a right triangle like this. You have 50 degrees in one corner and 10 here and x there. Now we are standing in this corner, so I'm thinking, what sides do I have? I have a hypotenuse. I don't have the opposite side, but I do have an adjacent. Adjacent and hypotenuse, if I look at my notes, is cosine. So it's going to be cosine of 50 degrees equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So it's going to be x over 10. Now here I don't have to do the switcheroo. I can multiply by 10 on both sides. And then I can put this in my calculator. So 10 times cosine of 50 is 6.428. Okay, and again, I have a hypotenuse in one of the legs. I could figure out the other leg if I wanted to. Okay, we'll just do one more that you can try on your own before I go through it. Let's say we have a triangle like this. This is 40 degrees. This is 15 and this is x. I'd like you to pause the video and give it a try. Okay, so labeling the sides here, we're going to have adjacent here and hypotenuse here. We don't have the opposite side. So adjacent and hypotenuse would be cosine. We're going to do cosine of the angle, 40 degrees, equals, and the adjacent is 15, the hypotenuse is x. To solve this, we're going to do the switcheroo. We're going to do 15 over cosine of 40 degrees, and then you can go to your calculator. 15 divided by cosine of 40 degrees, x is going to be 19.581. So some teachers will just say give us 19.6, round to a tenth. Okay, and again, if you need to find the other side, you know that this is 19.6, this is 15. If I set up my Pythagorean, 15 squared plus b squared should equal 19.6 squared. So why don't we actually finish this one through and figure out that last leg. 15 squared is 225. B squared remains. 19.6 squared is 384.16. And to start working this out, I need to subtract 225 on both sides. I get 159.16. And to undo that square, I got a square root. B is going to be, after I do this in my calculator, 12.616 if I round, or some teachers just say to the tenth, so it's around 12.6 on the other side. And there you have it. I found all three sides.